Here's an example of a 1955 Farmall Cub, and the only real difference between the previous model Cub and the new Cub, the grille of course is one of the most obvious, and the aircraft styling. Got to remember, in the 1950s we were in the jet age, so streamline, chrome, aircraft aluminum, all those things were hip. So International, not to be outdone, decided to give their whole line a facelift in 1954. So 54, they came out with a 100 series, and the motor was still the C60 at 1600 RPM. In 1956, they changed it a little bit. They gave it a little bit more RPM, so instead of 1600, they went up to 1800, and they gave them about another horsepower and a half. And that was the first time they increased the horsepower on the Cub. And the only difference between the standard Cub and the LoBoy that's readily noticeable is you can see that it sits a little shorter. And the way they did that was the front axle, instead of having the knee that goes down, it kind of went out straight. And the back, they rotated the final drive 90 degrees forward, and that brought the tractor down quite a bit. Now the problem that they encountered is that the attachments aren't the same for the fast hitch or the snow plow, or pretty much anything that the LoBoy and the regular Cub, they don't really share a lot of attachments in common, so you have to be careful. You can take some of the LoBoy attachments and put them on the Highboy, the Highboy, but not the reverse. So for example, you could take the fast hitch disc for the LoBoy, put it on this Cub, but the way that everything was set up, it wouldn't really work so well on the LoBoy. The snowplow was different. Instead of the C22 mower, they had the L22, and it's just a little bit different on how it's all set up here and for clearance because of the axles and whatnot. But anyway, in 1956, they came out with the increased horsepower, the LoBoy model, and they also were in the process of changing the way that the fast hitch mounted on the front here. You'll notice this for sure in like 1957 with the different, they called them the 560, change the grill out a little bit, but this big adjustment lever right here is your depth control, and it mounts on the front of the fast hitch, and it's very similar to the depth control that was on the previous non-fast hitch Cubs, but as you can see, it kind of gets in the way. So this was replaced by a hand crank right here, and that was what was in place for the remainder of the Cub productions when they came out with a fast hitch. So this tractor, one of the biggest changes, of course, other than the styling here, the air cleaner right here was different. So instead of one that goes in like the older ones, this actually went inside. This goes on the outside, and it's shorter. They also removed the stack off the top and made it underslung exhaust. You could still buy a vertical exhaust for this tractor. There was a hole cut in the hood, and it was a whole thing you could get from the parts department to still have a vertical muffler. But these tractors were primarily shipped with a low clearance underslung muffler. By the early 1950s, the Cub was mostly being bought up by municipalities and golf courses. So you'd have like schools, golf courses, government agencies, etc. They were buying the Cubs. They were putting mowers under them to mow beside the highway. You could get the Cub with dual wheels on it, and it wasn't really for traction, but the extra set of dual wheels, or the extra wheels, gave the tractor more width, and so you had a nice fat amount of rubber on the ground, so when you were mowing slopes, you got a little bit more stability out of it. The wide front end still here. In 1953, Farmall introduced the fast hitch on the Farmall Super C, which is right over here beside me, and that was the first tractor that had the fast hitch installed, and it was really an interesting and a great design, and it's unfortunate that they were too far behind the three-point hitch for it to really take hold, and also International wouldn't sell the patent of it. So they kind of engineered their own demise as far as the fast hitch goes. But regardless, in 1954, when the 100 series tractors came out, the whole line could have a fast hitch. The 1954 Cub could be had with the single prong, which was a large prong fast hitch. The 200 had the two prong, small prong like the Super C, the 300 and 400. So with the 100 series, you had a 300 utility, a 300 high clear utility, a 400 high clear. You had the 400 wheatland, which a standard tractor. The standard tractors were basically low, and they were non-adjustable front ends. They didn't have a fast hitch. They had hydraulics, but they were primarily for the wheat farmers, so which is why they called them the Wheatland Specials. But regardless, 1954, the whole 100 series tractors all had the fast hitch optional. The standard hitch was the fixed drawbar that had been in place before. In the early 1950s, International Harvester was the #1 tractor producer in the world. They produced more tractors than anybody else, and they made 1 million tractors before anybody else. In 1951 was the biggest year for International Harvester. That never again would they sell as many tractors as they did in the year 1951. Fowler McCormick had stepped down and McCaffrey took over. McCaffrey was a salesman, and he thought that farmers would go out and buy a new tractor every year. So he wanted to push sales. The number of farmers was decreasing, but the number of acres that each farmer had was increasing. So he thought that basically, the farmers market was saturated as far as agricultural equipment was concerned. So he really wanted to push other endeavors: freezers, refrigerators, creamers, cream separators. They also wanted to catch up with Caterpillar, so they really put a lot of money in engineering of their industrial equipment. Caterpillar, as you know, was the lead industrial equipment manufacturer, and probably still is. I haven't checked the stats, but they were. And so International wanted a piece of that pie, so they spent a lot of money and resources to build industrial equipment, which unfortunately took away from what they were good at, which was agricultural equipment. IH, as you know, they also had a truck division, so they had that going on, and they just really spread themselves too thin. They had their own metal foundry, they built their own tools. They really had a lot of things going on, and it was just too much for them to maintain. So, by the 1950s, late 1950s, with the failure of the 460, 560, never again would IH be at the top of the tractor market, and that ultimately led to the demise in the early 1980s, when the whole agricultural empire in the United States really suffered dramatically. So anyway, I digress, but I just wanted to give you a little history here on the 100 series, the change. In 1957, the only real difference between the Cub that I just showed you and the new Cub, they put the white on the nose and the white under the chrome lettering on the side. And then in 1958, late 1958, early 1959, they came out with the 560 style tractor, which had the crossbars on the front. And you'll see that in the 140, the 130, all of those tractors all had that same look on the front. So a lot of good innovation came out with those 100 series tractors, and that carried the torque amplifier lasted a very long time in IH's tractor lineups. One of the biggest improvements with the 100 series tractors over the previous letter series was hydraulics. The hydraulics were much better. They had a few more user-friendly features. The Hydro Touch, the Hydro Creeper, the torque amplifier came out with 100 series. So in 1958, for the 59 model year, they had the crossbars, the 560 style, and you'll also see that carried over to the 140 tractor as well. One of the other things I failed to mention with the introduction of the new style Cub with the horizontal muffler was they had to redesign the fuel line so that it wasn't running near the muffler anymore. And if you get a replacement fuel line, you need to make sure that you get one for that series tractor instead of the previous model. So that's just one thing that you can find that's a little bit different. I've got a little bit of period advertising for the 100 series. I've also got just a few more pieces of information, a few more advertising pieces from the earlier Cubs that I'm going to slip in and show you at the start of this video. So I hope you enjoy the video. I don't have a whole lot of IH video to show you for this one, so you'll just have to look at me and my pictures. Thanks for watching.